This wasn't a photo op. It wasn't a summit with choreographed speeches or a diplomatic waltz. It was a signal, a crack in the calcified divide between Christians and Muslims, tribes and nations, the wounded fragments of humanity itself. Two men, shaped by different scriptures, scarred by different histories, sat across from each other, not to erase their differences, but to face them. Their silence spoke louder than words, heavy with centuries of war, exile, and misunderstanding. Prayers whispered through clenched teeth during crusades and conquests, wounds never named aloud. And yet, woven into that silence was something else, a fragile, defiant hope, a belief that love could outlast fear, that peace could be more than a dream, it could be a discipline. This moment wasn't about headlines. It was about holiness, a meeting that dared to ask, what if the most important conversation for the future of peace didn't happen at the UN or a global summit, but here, behind closed doors, between two men who believe in the slow, sacred work of reconciliation? This is no parable. This is history unfolding, and it's only just begun. To understand this moment, you have to go back, not to Leo, but to Francis, the pilgrim pope who didn't just preach fraternity, but lived it. In 2016, when Pope Francis first met Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, the world barely blinked. No fireworks, no viral hashtags, just a quiet encounter in the Vatican's apostolic palace. It was a gesture made louder by its simplicity. For the first time in modern history, the head of the Catholic Church and the leader of Al-Azhar, the epicenter of Sunni Islamic learning, sat together, not as political players, but as spiritual kin. They didn't agree on everything. They didn't need to. What they shared was a vision. Peace doesn't come from institutions alone. It comes from hearts, from faces, from men and women willing to sit across from one another and choose dialogue over suspicion, empathy over defensiveness. That meeting sparked a friendship, one tested by time and tempered by honesty. Over the years, Francis and Al-Azhar spoke often, listened more, and dared to dream of a world where faith unites rather than divides. Their bond bore fruit in 2019 in Abu Dhabi, where they signed the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. Its title sounds academic, but its words were fire. It declared that all humans are brothers and sisters, that God wills the diversity of religions, that peace demands not just tolerance, but active cooperation. For some, it was radical. For others, overdue. For anyone who believes in the sacred dignity of every person, it was a watershed, a map for a fractured world. Francis didn't stop there. He carried that map like a pilgrim's staff, from Iraq's war-torn plains to Morocco's vibrant souks, from interfaith councils to refugee camps. He reminded the Church that evangelization isn't domination, it's invitation, it's not compromise, it's communion. In one unforgettable moment in Abu Dhabi, he and the Grand Imam embraced, their hug lingering longer than protocol. In another, they wept together over the world's brokenness. The Grand Imam called Francis, "my brother." Francis replied, "The path of dialogue is not easy, but it is necessary." These weren't gestures for show. They were signs of a friendship sealed by trust, a friendship that became a lifeline for Christians in places like Egypt, where churches have been bombed, or Syria, where faith is a daily risk. Now, the stage has shifted. Pope Francis, aged and frail, has stepped back, his season of visible leadership waning. But the seeds he planted are sprouting, and Pope Leo XIV is tending the harvest. Young, steady, with eyes that hold both fire and calm, Leo walks with the confidence of a shepherd who knows the flock is not just scattered, it's tangled, frightened, aching for hope. His first act as Pope wasn't a doctrinal decree or a political statement. It was a phone call to the Grand Imam, simple, deliberate, unscripted. "Now is the time for dialogue and building bridges," he said. It wasn't a new phrase, but in the mouth of a new pontiff, it was a vow, a signal that the Church will not retreat from the world's hardest conversations. Weeks later, they met in person. No cameras, no fanfare, just two men in a room heavy with history. Leo carried a rosary, and the prayers of Catholics watching a world fracture into extremes. He carried the stories of persecuted Christians in Nigeria, Iraq, Pakistan, believers who live on the fragile fault line between faiths. He carried a question that haunts every heart. Can we love our neighbor when their God has a different name? The Grand Imam brought his own weight, the hopes of Muslims seeking peace in a world quick to caricature their faith, the memory of mosques defaced, communities marginalized. Together, they didn't seek agreement. They sought encounter, a shared longing for something greater than division. This meeting wasn't about optics, it was about presence. And presence is dangerous. It demands vulnerability, the courage to sit with someone whose story challenges yours, whose pain might implicate your own. It's not diplomacy, it's discipleship. And Leo is all in. For some Christians, this sparks unease. Dialogue can feel like a tightrope. Does it dilute the gospel? Betray the uniqueness of Christ? These aren't shallow questions. They come from hearts shaped by martyrs, missionaries, and saints who gave everything to preserve the truth. The fear is real. In a world of relativism, can we speak of Jesus as the way, the truth, the life, while sitting with those who call God by another name? Leo's answer isn't compromise, it's confidence. Confidence that truth doesn't crumble in conversation. It shines. The Second Vatican Council, in its revolutionary document Nostra Aetate, laid the foundation. It didn't blur the Church's claim to Christ, but magnified it, recognizing that truth, wherever it appears, belongs to God. It honored the divine spark in other faiths, not as equal paths to salvation, but as echoes of a universal longing for the divine. For Muslims, it noted their worship of the one God, their devotion to prayer, fasting, and charity, their reverence for Abraham. These aren't political courtesies, they're theological recognitions, affirming dignity without erasing difference. Leo walks this path with clarity. He's not wielding dogma as a sword, but embodying the cross, the scandal of love, the paradox of humility. Christianity has never been about walls to keep others out. It's about doors wide enough for truth and love to walk through together. Jesus didn't shout from a distance. He sat with sinners, touched lepers, wept over cities that rejected him. His truth didn't retreat. It reached. And Leo is reaching, not to dilute the gospel, but to live it. This story isn't confined to Vatican halls. It's unfolding in the world's margins, in places where faith is tested and peace is fragile. In a refugee camp in Jordan, a Catholic nun and a Muslim doctor vaccinate children side by side, their hands moving in sync, their smiles a silent sermon. In a Rome parish, Christians and Muslims gather for a monthly potluck, sharing stories over plates of hummus and homemade bread. In Jakarta, a mosque opens its doors to teach Arabic to Christian neighbors, free of charge. In Beirut, young Catholics volunteer in a Muslim-led literacy program, their laughter louder than the city's scars. These aren't headlines, they're miracles. Small, stubborn signs that fear doesn't get the last word. In Marseille, a priest and an imam meet every Thursday for tea in a cramped cafe. They don't solve the world's problems. But when a stabbing shakes their neighborhood, they walk door to door together, comforting families, praying with the grieving, showing their people that faith doesn't divide. Fear does. In Nigeria, where interfaith tensions flare into violence, a bishop and a local imam co-host a youth soccer league, turning a field of conflict into a place of play. These are the bridges Leo speaks of, not made of stone or policy, but of flesh and blood, sweat and grace. Leo is fueling this movement, not with grand gestures but with quiet resolve. He's visited a joint Christian-Muslim refugee center, prayed at a vigil for victims of religious violence, shared a Ramadan meal with Muslim friends from his days as a bishop. He's launched a scholarship exchange between Catholic and Muslim seminarians, where future priests and imams read sacred texts together, not to blur lines, but to build trust. He's partnered with Muslim environmental leaders to protect sacred lands, echoing Laudato Si's call to steward our common home. These acts aren't flashy, but they're real. They say, "I see you," not as a category, but as a soul. Building bridges isn't safe. It's not clean. It's a cross. Christians and Muslims carry centuries of baggage: crusades, conquests, colonization, bombed churches, defaced mosques. In places like Pakistan or Nigeria, persecution isn't history. It's today. Dialogue can feel like a luxury when your faith costs you your safety. Yet, it's often those closest to the pain who understand what's at stake. A Nigerian Christian whose church was burned told his pastor, "I don't want revenge. I want my children to know peace." His words aren't weakness, they're warfare, a higher kind, fought with forgiveness and hope. Dialogue demands vulnerability. It means sitting with someone whose beliefs challenge yours, whose history might wound you. It means facing the trauma of the past, crusades, jihads, betrayals, without pretending it didn't happen. It's not about winning, it's about witnessing, and witnessing costs. Jesus didn't just preach love, he bled it. He crossed the chasm between heaven and earth, not with pleasantries, but with sacrifice. When Leo says, "Now is the time for dialogue and building bridges," he's not talking infrastructure. He's talking incarnation, a love that risks, that bends, that breaks open. This isn't just about popes and imams, it's about you. The bridge Leo's building stretches beyond Rome. It reaches your street, your school, your heart. It's the Muslim co-worker you've never invited to coffee, the neighbor whose hijab you've noticed but never complimented, the imam whose mosque you pass daily but never visit. Peace doesn't start in palaces. It starts in conversations, in shared meals, in questions asked with curiosity, not judgment. What would it look like to take one step? Not metaphorically, literally. Invite a Muslim neighbor to dinner. Ask about their faith, their family, their dreams. Share your own. Don't aim to convert, aim to connect. If you're a teacher, start a dialogue between students of different backgrounds. If you're in ministry, host a service project with a local mosque, not to blur beliefs, but to build bonds. If you're in a Christian neighborhood, reach out to a nearby Islamic center. Ask how you can serve together. If you're already friends with Muslims, go deeper. Talk about God, about what unites and what challenges. Let truth rise through trust. Pray. Pray for Leo, for the Grand Imam, for their friendship to multiply. Pray for the persecuted, the misunderstood, the seekers. Pray for yourself, that you'd have the courage to cross divides, to love without losing yourself. Pray for the Holy Spirit to guide, because without prayer, dialogue is just noise. The Spirit hovered over chaos to bring order. It fell at Pentecost to unite nations. It's the Spirit who makes space for truth and tenderness, who shows us how to speak boldly and listen humbly. Something's shifting, not in breaking news or viral posts, but in quiet corners of the world. Under Leo's leadership, Catholic-Muslim relations are evolving, not just continuing, but maturing. What began as symbolic gestures is becoming a movement. A joint Vatican Al-Azhar initiative now trains teachers and aids refugees across the Mediterranean, showing that peace is built when we suffer together, serve together, hope together. Seminarians, future priests and imams study side by side, not to agree, but to understand. Artists, environmentalists, and youth are joining hands, proving that interfaith isn't for elites, it's for everyone. This is no utopia. It's not about erasing differences or pretending the past didn't hurt. It's about believing that grace is stronger than fear, that love rooted in truth can't fail. Leo's not shouting from the balcony. He's walking into the shadows, torch in hand, illuminating a path. He's not asking for applause. He's asking the church to follow. Not just him, but Christ, the bridge and the destination, who laid himself down to cross the divide. The question isn't whether Leo will succeed. It's whether you will step onto the bridge. Because this story isn't finished. It's being written in your choices, your prayers, your risks. Every time you choose encounter over suspicion, you lay a plank. Every time you listen, you drive a nail. Every time you love, you build something eternal. This is the gospel in motion. Love your enemy. Bless the peacemakers. Be the bridge. Pope Leo XIV isn't just deepening Francis's legacy. He's handing you the pen. The next page is yours. What will you write?